So Johnny Fisher has a new trainer. You see, I was on social media and I saw a Johnny Fisher video making that announcement. So he is parting ways with Mark Tibbs and he is now with Tony Sims. So what is Tony Sims' resume? Well, Tony Sims has a respectable resume and he is a good trainer, and he's currently training Conor Benn, and I think Conor Benn actually had a really good performance against Chris Eubank Jr. Now, of course, there were variables like the rehydration clause, but still, it was a very respectable performance and an absolutely fantastic fight, grueling fight. Now, in this video, Johnny Fisher, he's doing like a rotational exercise. So he's doing rotational exercises. I'm not sure if he did that under Mark Tibbs, but what I liked was Johnny Fisher's awareness of why he's doing rotational exercises. So his awareness as to why he's doing it. I thought that was positive. Now, of course, Johnny Fisher was knocked out by Dave Allen, or was stopped by Dave Allen. So it makes sense as to why he would make the transition. And Mark Tibbs is a good trainer. Check out his collaboration or partnership that he had. When I say partnership, I'm referring to him being a trainer to Dillian Whyte. And Dillian Whyte had a very good reign under Mark Tibbs. He had some very good performances. So Mark Tibbs undeniably has good boxing credentials and should be respected. Now, with regards to Mark Tibbs, one of the important questions to ask is, who is in the camp? And the reason why that's an important question is because you need to understand that the environment that you're in is important. Think of it like this. If you're a businessman and you're surrounded by all these successful entrepreneurs, that's likely to have a positive impact on you. And I think the same can be said for boxing. If you're a boxer and you're surrounded by hungry lions, then that's going to have an impact on your desire, your motivation, etc. So who's in the camp? The boxers in the camp? That's important. It's not the only thing, but it's an essential thing. It's an essential piece of the puzzle. So when we look at the camp, we've obviously got Conor Benn, and Conor Benn has had that really good performance against Chris Eubank Jr., really respectable performance. But on top of that, Conor Benn brings the eyes, the attention, the media attention. But to my understanding, Conor Benn is a consummate professional in the sense that he trains diligently and rigorously. So that person will bring media attention, but because of his diligent training methods, he will also be a positive inspiration. You also have, is it Craig Richards, known as the Spider? He is a good prospect. He had a great fight with Buatsi. I thought he did really well against Buatsi, and I believe he went the distance with Bivol. So again, that's a credible fighter who will have his own ambitions, and he brings his own credibility. So to me, that's a good environment. There's also John Ryder and George Liddell. I believe George Liddell, apologies if I pronounced any of this wrong, I believe George Liddell is an upcoming heavyweight prospect. So to me, when you look at those four names, you have an environment that is conducive to growth. And that's good. I think that's a positive development for Johnny Fisher, because he needs to be in a productive environment. And the changes, Johnny Fisher may not only need changes with regards to his technique, with regards to his training, he may also need changes with regards to developing not only his boxing intelligence, but his psychological makeup. He may need to build resilience, and that's no shade on Johnny Fisher. I think he's shown that he's a brave guy. I mean, just the fact that he had such a close, contested, grueling bout with Dave Allen, and to just jump into the rematch says a lot about his character. And over here, character is important. So, that's a testament to his character. But you can always, entering a new environment brings new people, brings new fresh perspectives, and they can either add or take away. So from Johnny Fisher's perspective, hopefully this will ingrain some new technical adjustments and some new positive habits. And that's not to say that, Mark Tibbs obviously has a professional, credible operation. So it's about taking that operation and then trying to build on it. So maintain and then build. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with Tony Sims, again, not a criticism, this is more of the philosophy of boxing, that there's different ways to do something. It's kind of like that expression, there's different ways to skin a cat. Now, typically, Johnny Fisher's like, right hand here, and he's using the jab, and he's not mainly a head movement fighter. He's more like using, sometimes he'll use his feet like he did against Dave Allen, and then he's using the hand placement. But what I noticed in the training footage is that he was doing head movement. And the question is, obviously head movement is beneficial in boxing, but it may not be beneficial for certain fighters. So for example, Lennox Lewis typically would use his feet to get out the way, as opposed to using head movement. So what I'm saying here is that, is using a lot of head movement optimal for Johnny Fisher, or would it be more appropriate for his foot position to be better, his footwork to be better? The ideal scenario would be to be good at both, to have effective head movement and to have effective foot movement. But some people, if they overemphasize on their head movement, then they'll compromise their foot movement. And foot movement is really important in boxing. Also, what I noticed, I noticed something else, that as he was doing the pads, and remember, some of this will be for show because they're aware that a camera is there, he had a lower sense of gravity when he was throwing punches, and he wasn't throwing like short punches, he was throwing like really hard, fast. They were short, but there was more dynamite in the punches, for lack of a better word. This can be a good and a bad thing. I think there's a time to punch hard, and then there's a time to take the power off the punches. But here's an interesting insight that I saw. Tony Sims was showing him how to throw a left hook. And the way he was showing Johnny Fisher to throw the left hook is to dip and then throw. Now, clearly, that's how Mike Tyson threw his left hook. But again, remember when I said in boxing, there's different ways to do things. It's not necessarily right or wrong because it's subjective. If you look at the Kronk Gym or Emmanuel Stewart fighters, you will see a difference. For example, if you notice Lennox Lewis and Vitaly Klitschko and even Tyson Fury, they would throw the left hook, but they wouldn't include a dip. They would just throw the left hook short. A good example of this would be, I believe that there's examples of this with Tyson Fury and the Deontay Wilder fight. And if you go further down the line, a good reference point would be Evander Holyfield versus Lennox Lewis. In the first fight, he would like double up the jab, short left hook, and then the right hand. So this is just a different way to throw. So this way, you get more power, but it's less disguised. Why that can be detrimental, a good reference point for that would be the Evander Holyfield-Mike Tyson fight, the first one. In that, when Tyson would dip and throw, Evander would catch and counter. But when Tyson would, if Tyson was to throw it short, Holyfield wouldn't have the time to be able to counter it as effectively. So when you add that dip, yes, you get more power, but then it's more telegraphed. So it's like a high risk, high reward situation. But that's just a little technical nuance that would be different, because I think Mark Tibbs, he probably does a variation of both. You can do the dip, but then the short left hook. So that's again a strategic variation. And also there was some punching phases. I think I stole this from Adam Booth, but when you punch in phases, so you might have jab, jab, straight right, and then jab, straight right, left hook. So jab, jab, straight right, that's phase one. Jab, straight right, left hook, that's phase two. So they were going through some phases. Again, he had a lower center of gravity. So like I said, there's some real positives to take from this. Coming out of his comfort zone, making a transition, that's a positive thing. Going into a competitive environment, I know Conor Benn isn't his weight class, but considering Conor Benn is there, and then by default, that means I'm assuming Nigel Benn will be there. So that's world championship level eyes looking at you train. that means he's really putting himself in an environment where there's hungry fighters, and that means he'll need to, up his levels. Now, I did see a response from Mark Tibbs. This was very respectful. I would expect nothing less. He conducts himself like a gentleman. He said that he was proud of Johnny Fisher's achievements. He said that when he had him, he was green, but he didn't say this in a disrespectful way. So you could see that there was no real resentment there. And like I said, Mark Tibbs, he conducts himself in a gentlemanly-like way, which is good. Because not all trainers do that. Some trainers hold resentments. So I guess one of the questions is how far can Johnny Fisher go? Is he British champion level? Is he European champion level? Is he a world title contender? Is he a world champion? And if you look at the second Dave Allen fight, you would question whether he could get any further than European level or be a world title contender. But there is some variables there. That was a very good Dave Allen. That Dave Allen would have given a lot of people problems. So there is a variable there, and there was a massive difference in experience that Dave Allen capitalized on. And I guess for Johnny Fisher to get to European level and to be able to become a world title challenger, he would need to not only improve, not necessarily his technique, but he would need to improve, not just be able to make strategic adjustments, but his boxing intelligence. That needs to be improved. And hopefully he'll be able to reflect on what happened against Dave Allen and be able to understand the puzzle that was put in front of him, understand what he did wrong, and understand how he could correct it. And I guess what he needs to learn is not only to have a pre-fight plan, but also how to adapt in the moment. Fighters like Usyk, they're really good in adapting in the moment. Fighters like Evander Holyfield, they're good at adapting. Fighters like Lennox Lewis, they're good at adapting. Fighters like Larry Holmes, Floyd Mayweather. When you look at great fighters, one of the prerequisites of being a great fighter is being able to adapt. So time will tell on what level Johnny Fisher is.